The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Monday. It is August 10th. It's not quite an overreaction Monday, but it could be. Lots of things to react to. Blaise Matuidi could be in Miami joining Inter. We'll get into that as we go this morning. You've got MLS matches back on the calendar for the next phase of the regular season. We'll get into that this morning. You've got the Champions League quarterfinals set. We'll get into that. We'll get into whatever else you guys want us to get into, and you can tell us that by tweeting at us at Soccer Down Here. You can email us, soccerdownhere@gmail. You can join the Twitch Clubhouse. I don't know what we're going to call this thing. It keeps having a new name every day. The Locker Room, La Banda, I don't know anymore. Y'all come up with it. I'm still waiting for something to grab hold. You can join there on twitch.tv/soccerdownhere. So, John, where do you want to start this morning?
Well, I figured let's go with recency bias and discuss what might have been happening over the last half hour out of Miami.
No, nothing's happening in Miami. Let's get it right, and nothing's being announced in Miami yet. Michelle Kaufman had a report in the Miami Herald that Blaise Matuidi was a target and deal could get done, and Fabrizio Romano, who is an expert on the Italian game, tweeted out with his outlet Sky Sport that Blaise Matuidi to Inter Miami is a done deal. It's not a done deal till it's held up, of course. Total agreement reached today with Juventus. Medicals scheduled. Here we go. Very, very interesting. They still need a number 9. Obviously, you get a chance to get a player like this, you're going to grab it. But they still need a number 9. They still need a number 9. And they still need a number 9. They have midfielders. They have a lot of midfielders. They still need a number 9. Somebody's got to score goals. And your midfield got upgraded with this whenever he can arrive. Yeah. They still need a number 9. Like, I thought this spot was going to be for a number 9 because they're going to have to go find somebody who can score goals.
I'm looking at Transfermarkt just to kind of get a gauge for market value. And once again, market value being what it is. Back in late 2018, December 20th, 2018, according to Transfermarkt, market value for Blaise Matuidi, $33 million at the age of 31. Since that moment, according to their market value evaluations, however that is evaluated, his current market value, $11.5 million. So, when you go from 31 to 33 and you're hanging out at Juventus, I will say this. I enjoyed watching Blaise Matuidi on those matches when I did watch Ligue 1 and he was a part of PSG, and that was a part of his uptick in his value to franchises, which meant that, PSG to Juve, you see what he's there, but all of a sudden, over the last handful of seasons, his value has gone down. I'm intrigued, but once again, it goes back to your previous thoughts and paragraphs about this, that they're missing another certain number on the pitch. And I'd like to know where Blaise Matuidi fits into all this. So let's just say, if this comes to pass, I'm intrigued.
Hold
what?
No. Where he fits in the starting lineup in the midfield.
Well, yeah.
There's no question about where he fits.
I mean, he fits. What I'm saying is, yes, I agree. He goes immediately into the starting lineup.
Yes, trust me. There's no question where he fits. He fits in the midfield. That's not the problem. The problem is they need somebody to score goals.
Yes.
That's not where he fits. That's what the team needs. And they still haven't solved that problem. Right. This is also assuming, and without seeing the numbers, I think both of these are possible. I'm sure that Julian Carranza can be bought down and moved out of a designated player spot. That can be sorted out. You've got a boatload of allocation money to work with. That opens up one designated player spot, but I don't know if you can do that for Matias Pellegrini. And you're not doing that with Rodolfo Pizarro. So now you've got to figure out a midfield with Matuidi, with Pizarro. Who's going to play with them in the midfield, or is Pizarro going to go out wide? I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I think this is a bad move for Inter Miami because I think they went for the exciting name as opposed to what they needed. And I think this is going to come back to hurt them. No, everybody's jumping up and down about this one. Unless he's going to be able to answer the scoring issues, or Pizarro does, or you figure out a way to play a false nine with Pizarro, I guess. This doesn't solve their biggest problems. It doesn't. And I think it looks good on paper. It looks good in a headline. I don't think it makes Miami better, and I think it shows you that you've got to question Miami's roster building. I don't know why they have gotten off the hook of being thrown under the bus. Everybody wants to attack everybody else for their roster construction. This is a bad roster. This roster is not good enough right now. And this doesn't solve it. This doesn't solve it when you're three designated players, and Carranza's a young attacker who's not ready to be the number 9 for a team with this kind of expectation. Pellegrini's a young player with limited experience. Pizarro, very inconsistent, but very good when he is on. Matuidi, dipping, but can he still play at this level? Absolutely. He can be very effective in this league. But how are you going to make it all fit? Who's going to score the goals? Your defense is still a question mark. Luis Robles is starting to look old. You've got a lot of other questions that this does not solve. So the whole, let's say, Miami is the greatest thing since sliced bread in terms of putting a roster together, that has to be questioned because this move does not answer their problems. This is a Hollywood kind of move. Maybe you just have more talent than other teams in the midfield, and that's going to be able to carry you. It will against some. You're going to have questions about keeping the ball out of the net. You're going to have questions about scoring goals. That's still a question at this point. And like you said, he's 33. He is winding down. He's not bad by any stretch. He played 35 matches, started 23 for Juventus this year, played over 2,000 minutes, but he played about 220 less minutes than he did the year before. This is a player who, even going all the way back to his time at PSG, he's not a guy who has started more than 30 matches in a calendar year in a league since 2013. That's the last time he played over 3,000 minutes. That's the last time he played over 2,500 minutes, was 2014. He's not going to score a ton of goals for you. He's going to cover a lot of ground. I don't think this solves anything. I think you're spending a lot of money on a player that doesn't solve your problems and is slipping. I mean, you're talking about starts 27, 29, 23. You're talking about minutes in the 24 to 2,200 range. I don't know. This doesn't feel like a smart move. It doesn't feel like a smart move at all.
Shiny object? Basically, you bring in a guy in because of a name that you can bring in?
Yeah, but I mean, he's not even that kind of a name. Like, are you going to have a line of people outside the door to buy tickets? No. Are you going to have a line of people to buy jerseys for a day?
No.
Maybe. No, for a day. Like you'll sell a bunch of jerseys in France. That's fine. For a day. Is this going to do anything to change who you are? You got a better number 8. You got a better box-to-box midfielder now. You got one at a very high level. He's got a World Cup, to his name. There's not many players in this league that have that. Absolutely true. He doesn't solve all the problems that this team has. And now you've taken up a spot with a midfielder who doesn't solve those problems. I mean, he's a designated player. There's no question about that. He had 1 year left on his deal. Katie says it seems LA Galaxy-ish, and I disagree. LA Galaxy would make moves like this for players that have an impact. I think he's going to be a good player in this league, don't get me wrong, but is he going to change who they are? Are they going to go from a team that would have finished 8th in the East to 1st now? No. I mean, Zlatan, Robbie Keane, even Giovanni Dos Santos was a guy who had an impact. Jonathan Dos Santos had an impact. No, I think this feels like a move that's less than that. This is a really odd move. Maybe he makes everybody around him better. He absolutely has that ability to. But I still don't know who scores the goals, and I still don't know if this defense is strong enough. So we'll see. This is the kind of move that I worry about in this league because it's a big spend. It is a name that's going to get a lot of attention, but it's a name that could be a disappointment because he's not what he used to be, and he doesn't move the needle. Rodolfo Pizarro will have more of an impact on Miami's bottom line than Blaise Matuidi. And that needs to be understood because of the market, because of the Mexican market in this country. This is a move that feels like a reach. We'll see if it is.
Yeah. I was instantly intrigued when all of that stuff started coming across in the 8 o'clock hour this morning, so I figured I would start with that, considering that we've got schedules out and hub groups basically for your first round of 6 when it comes to the next round of the MLS schedule. So that was why I picked Blaise Matuidi first, because it happened in the 8 o'clock hour.
It's not done yet. It's being talked about in the 8 o'clock hour. Let's make that
so being
clear.
Talked about in the 8 o'clock hour.
Relax. I don't want to mislead people because we see this all the time on, it's done. Oh, well, it's not done. So it's being reported as done.
Until you hold up the jersey and have that promotional photo or the promotional press conference opportunity. So
Adam from 816 wants to call me out.
Oh,
he's trashing MLS. Adam, I'm going to get defensive for a second. No, I'm just kidding.
Uh-oh.
When we talked on Saturday's show about the coaching analogy and how Pochettino and Sarri were potentially out of Atlanta's range in terms of getting them in here, I said Atlanta was like Boise State, like that team that's on the outside of the major conferences who is going to get either an older coach who is trying to rebuild their career or a coach on the rise. And so far we've seen Atlanta go for somebody who's trying to rebuild their career, somebody with a track record. Adam saying Atlanta's Boise State's being way too generous to MLS. I disagree. I totally disagree. I don't think it's North Dakota State or something that lower and saying that's a stretch, or saying D2. MLS is a top 10 league in the world. And I think in terms of attention, it's higher than some of the leagues that people would say the quality's better. And you got to factor that in when you're talking about the coaching decisions. Tata Martino didn't go to other leagues that people say are better than MLS. He didn't go to Belgium. Why would he go to Belgium? Is Belgium a better league than MLS? Some people would argue that it is. Is the Eredivisie a better league than MLS? Some people would argue that it is. He didn't want to go there. Managers, I think it's a little harder to compare because you have the hemisphere as well, where MLS is definitely a bigger issue in this hemisphere than a D2 or a North Dakota State or something like that. I think MLS, in terms of quality, is not as far along as in terms of attention you can get by coming here. So it puts it in a unique spot. Boise, I thought, was a pretty decent comparison. I think Adam is not being insulting to Atlanta. Don't jump on Adam. I think Adam is saying that MLS is not as high as I'm saying it is. It's to be seen. I think it is. I think in terms of the types of talent that you're seeing, I mean, Blaise Matuidi is a good example. Like, he's not going to China. I would see China as something like that. The coaches who go to China, I would see as more of that kind of move. Where it's just all about the money. Somebody's got to overpay to get you to come in. The level's not there. The stuff in the Middle East, the stuff in India, it's just the level's not there. MLS is at a much higher level than that. So I think MLS is in that top 10 in general in the world. I do think that's the case. I've said it many times. I feel like the top 4, I think we can all agree that whatever combination you want to put it in, England, Germany, Italy, Spain. That's your top 4. France is number 5. I think they're a cut above everybody else, but they're not in that top 4. I just don't think the league as a whole is as good as those 4, but it's better than the next group. And the next group's a crapshoot. I mean, it depends on where you want to rank Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, MLS, Belgium, Netherlands, the championship, if you want to put that in there. I think people sometimes overrate the championship in a big way. Portugal, who else? Russia, Greece, Turkey. I think those are a crapshoot because it's not just Is Atlanta going to go beat Trabzonspor? Is Atlanta going to go beat Anderlecht? I'm not ruling that out, but what's going to get more attention for somebody coming to the league? Going to Trabzonspor, going to Anderlecht, or going to an Atlanta or a Miami or a Los Angeles? I think that does factor into the conversation a bit. I think it definitely factors in on the coaching side. So the other thing that makes MLS appealing from a coaching perspective is something that I do think attracted Tata Martino in a big way. The league has a lot of parity. The structure of the league is to not have super clubs. That puts more pressure on... Oh, okay, I see where Adam's going. I'll get to that in a second, Adam. I got you. That puts more pressure on coaches because you can't just go outspend everybody. You can't just go outspend everybody. It's impossible to do that. You can do it to a degree, but that doesn't guarantee you winning anything in MLS. The coaching is very important. You have to develop talent. You have to be, tactical, and you have to have the right tactics in games where maybe you are overmatched here, you are overmatched there, et cetera, et cetera. Adam says Boise can still win a national championship. Atlanta can't win Champions League. But that's the thing. That is saying that the Copa Libertadores, that is saying that CONCACAF or Asia or Africa and their Champions Leagues don't matter. I disagree with that. Until you have a worldwide, and you have the Club World Cup, but we know that's not exactly the same thing we're all talking about here. Until you have that, I think you can't say that you have to be in Europe to be the best. Then otherwise, why are we doing it everywhere else? Why aren't we all trying to go to Europe to play? I just don't buy that. I think it's in South America, we know what the Libertadores is, and we know what those leagues are, and we've seen it in Club World Cups. Are the European teams generally better? Yes. That's a fairly recent development, and a lot of it's down to money. You go back and you look at the Boca teams that beat Real Madrid in the early 2000s. Those Boca teams were really good. You go back and look at Estudiantes, who was not a top team in Argentina and South America. They had an amazing run under Diego Simeone before he went to Europe, and they took Barcelona to extra time. It was a great match, one of the best Club World Cup finals I've seen. It's not just Europe and then nothing else matters. To me, it's not. I can see if people want to look at it that way. But I'm not looking at it that way. I'm going by the orders that I said in terms of hierarchies. You've got 4, you've got France, you've got a group of everybody else that is going to be dependent year on year. Nobody has established that they are next. Where MLS, if you want to question the quality, I think the attention worldwide, because MLS gets more attention than a lot of other leagues that people say are better in terms of quality. That helps boost it up a little bit. So it's apples to pears, in the conversation, because we're comparing it to college football. But I do think the point that I was making originally was saying that there are some managers that are being mentioned as Atlanta targets that I don't think Atlanta's in that ballpark. And I think we both agree on that. What that ballpark is, I think, is bigger than what others think. And I think that's why you're seeing some of the managers and the players coming to MLS. And I think it needs to continue to get bigger. It needs to continue to get to where Don Garber said and where others have said, they want MLS to be one of the best leagues in the world. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of work. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen because you said it. It's possible over time. And I think this scenario that we're in right now, you're going to see some other leagues take a hit that MLS might be able to. And look, a lot of this is dependent on how the country handles the coronavirus, and they're not really helping much right now. If they get through it, I think MLS from a business structure is in a position to handle it better and bounce back faster than some of the leagues it's in competition with, and that could change this conversation in the next 5 years. I think the World Cup in 26 will absolutely change the conversation. We could be talking very differently about this kind of scenario in 2027, 2028, after a World Cup's been here, and you do see a boost in the overall just dollars put into the game. And as we know, and that's why Europe is ahead, money talks. Money gets the best players. Money builds the best leagues, best clubs. Money guarantees or doesn't guarantee, comes close to guaranteeing success. So you have more money here. You can spend more. You can have better managers. You can have better players. You have a better league. It's going to take time, but it can get there.
4-Card Ahmed came in the overnight on Twitter. He says, a fun power hour on the weekend. Love the one sentence on Pirlo to Juve. That's just crazy talk, followed by 4 laughing and crying emojis. And Pochettino, according to 4-Card Ahmed, is coming to Atlanta United. We're no Boise, my friend. And then he follows that up with a Yoda gif of, you will see, you will see.
Why would he come here, though? I'd love it if he did. Why? Let's answer the question. Put yourself in Mauricio Pochettino's shoes. Why would he come to Atlanta?
Ain't nobody else knocking on your door and you want a challenge?
You think there aren't people knocking on his door?
Oh, I know people. I would assume that people are knocking on his door.
Okay, then throw that one out.
But
why would he make the decision to come to Atlanta? You know he's got options.
Mm-hmm.
So why? What would draw him here? That's what I'm asking. It's not. I mean, no, I'm not saying this. I'm not trying to set you up, John. I'm not trying to set you up and say like it's impossible. There's no way.
I was trying to think of.
I'm asking for why.
Well, I mean, what I was trying to think of was his time at Spurs, where he was building something from within and being able to do something like that. And that framework is here with Atlanta United. So it would be continuing what he was able to do in his late time with Spurs and doing it over here in MLS.
Yeah, but why would you build something in a lesser competition than what you were building before? That's the idea, to have the ability to build something true. The idea to have stability. He could have that here if he wanted it. I don't think if he came here, I don't think it would be to build something over a long period of time, because he's going to get an offer in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
He would be here for a short period of time. I really don't. I can't find the reasoning for him to take that. Adam with a good one. We'll maybe come back to that, Adam. That's a funny one. Depending on college football right now, you never know what's going to happen with FCS and FBS and who knows what else, Power 5 and Group of 5. And why would Pochettino come to Atlanta? If that announcement happened, what would his reasoning be? I mean, there would have to be no other offers that he liked better, which I think is going to be difficult to say. He would have to be intrigued by the possibilities and the challenges. He would have to be sold by the ownership and the leadership, and that can absolutely happen. He would have to be sold on the project, and even though I think he would come in with the idea of having a longer project, I don't think that's realistic. I'm just not buying it, because my concern for him, if I was his agent and Atlanta puts a huge offer down on the table, I would say you're decreasing your reputation for some of the reasons that Adam said before. You are decreasing your reputation by going from Tottenham and being in a Champions League final to Major League Soccer. You're not at that point in your career to where you can say, it doesn't matter, I'm going to take the job I want to take right now. He's still growing. I mean, Pochettino does not have a trophy, correct?
Yeah, I don't think he's got one. I'll effort real quick.
He does not have a trophy to his name. He needs to show that he can win in Europe where he's been. Otherwise, it feels like a step back. And I don't think he's at that point that a step back would help him in any way at the moment. So I would love to see it. I love the way he sees the game. I love the way he feels the game. I like what I think he wants to build with a team. I would love to see it. I think it is highly unlikely because it's not the right time for him in his career to make that move.
Yeah. Managerial, just awards, no trophies. So Espanyol, Southampton, and Spurs, his 3 managerial records.
And he's parlayed that into being linked to Juventus, Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid. So that's the path he's on. And nothing's going to change that right now. So changing it would be coming to Atlanta. That would change that path. People would look at him differently. He doesn't need that yet. There's plenty of managers that are going to be under consideration. And understand, like, I'm not saying this to say, like, don't call him. Of course you want to sound him out. Of course you want to sound out potentially Maurizio Sarri. You want to talk to these people and see what they think and see where their head's at. And you never know. But I think much more in Pochettino's case, it's unlikely. Sarri would be a little bit different. He'd be a whole different challenge in terms of making the move here. But he's more likely because he's at a different point in his career. And he's worked in smaller teams, and he's made a jump, and he's won trophies. I mean, for him, like, I don't think he's going to go elsewhere in Italy right now. I don't think there's anywhere he would potentially land there unless he wanted to see if Roma's going to make a change, and there's been some rumors about that. 4 cards yelling at me. I'm sorry, 4 card. I'm not trying to, like, burst your balloon here, but I think this is getting a little bit too much. This is what's going to happen. I don't want people to be disappointed if it doesn't, because it's not likely. Could it? Yeah, anything can happen. Blaise Matuidi could play in Miami. Anything can happen, but it's not likely. And don't be disappointed if it doesn't. But Sarri would be interesting because he's at a different point in his career. There's nowhere else in Italy he's going to go. He's not going to go back to England. I mean, where would he go in France right now? The PSG job's not open. I don't think any of the other major ones are open for him to walk into. There's nothing in Spain that I think he'd want to go to. I couldn't see him in Germany. So, if he wanted to take it, he'd be in a different position too. He'd be interesting on a lot of levels, but he's a great manager. And the work he's done building teams up, what he did at Napoli, great manager who hasn't gotten the respect that he deserves. So he's much more possible. The power of attraction, according to 4 card. That's what's going to bring Mauricio Pochettino here. It's going to have to be a lot of attraction, my friend. Lots and lots of attraction. Christopher Abel with a question. You start with us, John. What do you think about Atlanta's next 6 games? This makes for a nice warm-up for an unproven and inexperienced first-team manager in Stephen Glass. Nashville, Miami, Christopher thinks should be blowouts, which I don't know if I'd say blowouts, but should be easier opponents. And then you have a team in Orlando that's better, and Christopher says still not an MLS Cup contender. I'm expecting 13 points at least out of these games.
Yeah, that was the number that I had in my head was 13. And
it's 4-1-1.
Yeah. So I see that as attainable.
I see it as attainable.
So that's I'm good with 13. I'll take 13 and run with it right now. It's all good to me. Well, you won't hear me complain about 13 points.
Well, no, duh. I mean, of course not. I think 10 is the minimum you want to get out of this. That's 3 wins and a draw. That's where I feel like the baseline is, because you have a manager in Stephen Glass that you want to have some patience with, because this is his first time in this opportunity. He's worked with this group of players for a few weeks. You've got 6 games in 3 weeks. Your depth is going to be tested. Now, I agree. Getting Nashville and Miami for 4 of those is going to help you a lot. But it's still not easy to do that. What if you have an injury? What if it just takes a little bit longer? Orlando, both games are going to be difficult. Both games are going to be very difficult against Orlando because they have a lot of confidence right now. So 3 wins and a draw. 10 points is kind of like that's my plus-minus number. And I think it'll be the over. I think it will be the over here. But 10 points is kind of where my baseline is. Miami, they'll be maybe a little bit better defensively with Leandro Gonzalez-Perez. I don't know how long it'll take them to get Matuidi in. And when he can contribute, it might not happen in this phase. They still need help scoring goals. I still have questions about Luis Robles and the back line. Mm-hmm. So they're the weakest of the 3 to me. Nashville's the next. Nashville's been, in their 2 games we saw, and we saw one firsthand, one in Portland, they were a difficult out. I want to see how they look after this long layoff for them. They play Wednesday against Dallas, so we'll get a look. We'll have a better sense of Nashville then. I don't think Nashville's an easy opponent. I think Nashville is a difficult out. I think they're well organized. I think they're going to be more defend and counter. I don't think Gary Smith has a problem with that. I think the expectations allow him to do that now. It's not about having to go out and entertain as much as get into the playoffs. Get some results, get into the playoffs, and let's see where it happens here. So Nashville will be far more difficult than I think Chris has given them credit for. And Orlando will be really difficult. I mean, if you split with Orlando, if you maybe get 4 points from Nashville and you beat Miami in both, that would get you to where that 13 is. I'm kind of more in the 3 wins, draw, 2 losses, because I think you're going to drop one somewhere to Nashville or Miami. I just think the games piling up could be difficult.
Okay.
So I'm taking a slower approach here. I want to see it build from here. You don't have to rush it. But I just want to see better play. That's the main thing I'm looking for here is I want to see building blocks. I'd rather see building blocks here and drop a game because you're putting building blocks in place than do what I think Gary Smith will do and be, cagey, tactical, and try to get a result no matter what. You've got to build something for the rest of this year. So be curious to see how it plays out. It's good to get Nashville and Miami in this for sure, but I don't think they're the pushovers that maybe others do.
No, I think that the Nashville games will not set the world on fire when it comes to your overs and unders. I'm looking at those as being very, very, very testy, 1 goal, 1-0, 2-1-ish kinds of things. I think that the Miami games, you can win both of those. And then obviously with what we're seeing right now with Orlando, those are going to be, if you were to rank the 6 games, that would be 1 and 2 for me in toughest contest. The 2 with Orlando. Then you look at Nashville and then Miami. The 2 with Nashville, the 2 with Miami. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for me. I figure you can win the both with Miami. You win at least one of the Nashville games. Probably get a draw with that second one, and then the Orlando ones are the ones that are the toughest.
Understand a couple of things here. We've seen it in leagues around the world. Home field advantage, forget it. Throw it out the door. So it's not, ranking the 2 games. You're ranking the opponent because the away game, the home game, it doesn't matter. Orlando's the toughest. Nashville's next. Miami's next. It's not like going to Miami's more difficult than going to Nashville. No, it's not because there's not going to be fans. Now, I believe, what have we heard? I don't think Nashville said anything yet. I don't think Miami has said anything yet. We've seen fans in the stands in the state of Florida in USL Championship. I don't believe Fort Lauderdale had fans in the stands for their match in USL League One. I don't know where they're going to go. Atlanta won't have fans in the stands, so that will take away some of the home field advantage. With the numbers you're talking about, I don't know if you'll get much of an advantage if you have, in Miami, 3,000-4,000. Would probably be the max. In Nashville, you could probably get up to 10 if you wanted to stretch it. Maybe that has more of an effect. Going to be interesting. Christopher Abel says, so if Orlando picks up a few red cards in tomorrow's final, will those players be suspended for a game or do cards reset? Red cards don't reset, was my understanding. There's no yellow card accumulation from here into the season, but the red cards, and especially something you're going to get a straight red on, I'm just about positive that would carry over. I'll try to get a final answer for you here in just a bit, Chris. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure a straight red would carry over. And any kind of multiple game suspension would absolutely carry over because those are more serious. Let's see. Abby with a good point. So if Orlando loses in the final after the run they've had, could that be a dent to their confidence? It could. Could that put them in a different position? Yeah, it could. They'll get a chance to rebuild it, though, and they play the same teams. So, they're going to get opportunities to knock some teams off as well and rebuild that confidence. Oscar Pareja is not a wildly up-and-down kind of manager either. If the team loses its confidence a little bit, he'll build it back. He's a really good man manager. If they win, they'll be flying really, really high. If they lose, okay, maybe some of those questions creep in, but I don't think it'll be a huge effect. Jarrett's saying that the new manager bump could be absurd, and it could. It absolutely could. You've got a ton of talent. I'm trying to keep the expectations realistic, because this is a year like no other one we've seen, and you still don't have Joseph Martinez. I mean, you've got Kubo Torres, you've got Jurgen Damm. How is it going to fit? We don't know yet. That's going to help Stephen Glass in some ways, because the opponents don't know what to expect. Is it a 3-4-3? Is it a 3-5-2? Is it a 4-3-3? Is it a 4-4-2 diamond? Who knows? It could be anything, and that's going to throw them off with these new faces coming in. That'll help early on. Tape gets out pretty quick, so that'll change rather quickly. It's I'm just trying to be realistic. I think, an interim manager, you don't want to put too much pressure on. You want to give him time to grow into the job. You want these players to grow with him. And with all the new faces, you want to give them some time.
North Carolina-based developing news sounder, please.
That's a lot of stuff, and I don't have a North Carolina-based developing news sounder.
Officially official from our friends at the North Carolina Courage.
Go ahead. You've been in TV. Breaking news is news. Officially official is news. It's not developing news.
It happened 38 minutes ago.
Is it official or not?
It is official.
Then it's breaking news. Go.
Okay. Three-time NWSL champ, current and World Cup champ Sam Mewis signed a contract with Manchester City, the club announced today. North Carolina Courage retains Mewis's NWSL rights. Quote, I've been so lucky to be a part of the Courage for the last 3.5 years. It's been so challenging, rewarding, and fun to compete with my teammates and friends in front of the most wonderful fans. I miss North Carolina already, and I hope to return to the team in the near future, quoting Paul Riley. Sam has been a tremendous leader for our club, and her development has been astronomical. She has improved her game in every department, and I'm super proud of the player she's become. This step to Manchester City is important in many aspects. She gets to be uncomfortable again. Her role will change, different tactics, and she'll be shaped even further as she strives to become the best box-to-box midfielder in the world. Most important for Sam right now are competitive games, especially leading into an Olympic year, and she'll be able to play 20 games over the next 6 to 7 months, which is hugely valuable, end quote.
Massive. Absolutely massive. It's a great get for Manchester City. I think she'll thrive in that kind of system. She's a player who I don't think gets enough respect in the U.S. and in the U.S. women's national team circles. One of the best players in the world. So she'll thrive over at City, and this will help her take some steps forward in terms of getting that respect, I think, in terms of, impressing Vlatko Andonovski. She'll be in a much better position on the other side of this.
Yeah, so we're just waiting to see the picture with her holding up the jersey at Manchester City. Looking forward to seeing what she does over there.
Well, it's done. Hold on. It's done, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't care if she's holding up the jersey. That's done. It's done, John. It's done. Stop that. No, you do that because you say it's not done. It's done, right? It is done.
Yeah, North Carolina Courage were the ones that put out the... I wouldn't have read the Paul Riley quote if it wasn't done.
Well, that's why I'm making sure you say, and many do, and I repeat it sometimes too. It's not official till they've held up the jersey. This one's official. Uh-huh. You can't really hold up the jersey very easily because it's not easy to just hop across the Atlantic right now. So, no, it's done. Stop bringing stuff up and confusing people. Thank you, Johannes. Red cards would carry over. Only red cards would carry over. No yellows. From the MLS's back tournament final tomorrow, Orlando-Portland. That's the only thing that would carry over. Shiva with a point about Orlando. And Shiva says, and I agree with this, I don't want to take anything away from Orlando, but I do think their game depends on Nani's mood and performance at times. They do have Nani dependencia, like Messi with Barca. They do have that. I don't think it's solely dependent on that because they're pretty organized. They're pretty structured. Pareja's got that back line and that midfield working together really, really well. I think their attack, their firepower is very dependent on Nani. Because I don't know who steps up if he's having a bad night. I mean, Mueller, you're asking for him to get to that point. Is he there yet? Maybe not. Pereira can, and he would be the one that maybe could be the one who steps up if Nani's having a bad day. Maybe it's Pereira. They still don't have a traditional number 9 who's burying a bunch of goals, and that's why Nani's even more important. Tesho Akindele has some pressure on him. Right now, I'd agree with you, Shiva, but I don't know if that's going to be the situation across the board. Matt Wagner says, if Orlando allows fans, I'm going to be none too happy. MLS should be criticized if they do allow it, considering Miami and Orlando are hotspots. It's not MLS's decision. They're putting it down to the individual teams because you have some that are not in hotspots, which I get. I don't know how you handle this in a way that suits everybody. I honestly don't think it's possible. And I don't know if MLS, I guess they could. I don't know if they'd have to do that across the board. I don't know if MLS is the one that's best served to say, you can have fans, you can't have fans. Yeah. That's a tough spot for the league to be in. I would tend to agree. I don't think it's a good idea there. I don't think it's a good idea in Miami. I'd like to see them not do it because I don't know how they do it and guarantee that safety. The majority of teams are not doing it. Now, we know Dallas is up to 5,000. We know that Real Salt Lake is. We also know that when you're comparing like outbreaks, Utah's in a very different conversation than Florida or Texas or Georgia.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's hard for the league because they don't want to make a rule saying nobody can have fans right now when there are some teams that could. And the money is that important. It is. I mean, it's not important to the point that you are not safe because you're not just going to allow fans in, no questions asked, no protocols. Like there are plenty of things you're going to have to do to make that happen. But if you can do that, the league would want to do that, and the teams would want to do that because they do need the revenue. It's a really tough spot, and we're seeing this come up in the college football conversation right now too, where it is getting so bogged down in so many different things, and nobody's actually looking at logistics of either side. Nobody's looking at the logistics of, okay, if we're going to play, how would we do it? They should have done that in May, and they haven't. If we're not going to play, how do we fulfill our obligation to these student athletes that make our universities and our athletic department so much money? Or are we just going to say, bye, go home, see ya? I mean, you can't do that either. So what are the logistics of either side of the decision? Everybody's bogged down in yelling back and forth and pointing and not actually working out how to do this stuff. I think MLS and the way they structured it with announcing 6 games over a 3-week period and then reassessing what they do next is the smart way. In a 3-week period, and as we have seen with how you can handle this with testing, with the way you're going to travel, because it's going to be by charter, travel day of the game, you are limiting exposure risks. It's more than it was in a bubble. That's a definite. But you're still limiting things. You're still keeping it safer. And you'll see if that's possible. I mean, I'm assuming that they haven't announced the third section of games or the next section of games because could they go back to a bubble scenario? Could they go to multiple bubbles? Could they do something like that? Absolutely. If it doesn't work, you've got flexibility now to do it. Like Major League Baseball doesn't. They announced a full 60-game schedule. Now you're having problems because you have teams who are having positives and postponing games. And now what do you do from a competitive situation? MLS is giving itself as many different outs as possible. None of this is easy. In a perfect world, sure, you would just sit at home and do absolutely nothing. In a perfect world. It's not a perfect world. Your business might shut down if that's the case. And I think you're going to see this at the college sports level. If they don't play, you're going to see a lot of programs go away. Mm-hmm. Football included, but other sports, absolutely. Because there's just no money for them without football. I think if you saw this, well, you're going to see it in minor league baseball. You know, and this has nothing to do with MLB's plans to cut minor league baseball down a lot. This is because they're not playing. You're going to see a lot of minor league teams not be able to come back. I mean, you saw the XFL go under to the point now that The Rock owns it. Like that, you're seeing all these different things. You're going to see it more in other countries as well. That's why people are trying to figure out how to do business right now. And that's sports and non-sports. Everybody's trying to figure that out. It's challenging. I don't think there is a perfect answer to any of it. but you've got to do it safely. And I think MLS feels like the players understand after going through the bubble experience, and this is something we haven't seen, and it is a point to make here. We haven't seen a league go from a bubble to a non-bubble scenario. The closest thing we've seen was the Bundesliga having that week of quarantine before game week 1 when they came back, and then going into their normal scenario. I agree with the statements that the league made, in that the players have an understanding of how much they have to do, how much responsibility they have to be able to do this safely. They've seen what's happened in baseball. They've seen how the bubble worked. They can't have a bubble at home exactly, but they know what they can do to limit risk, and they're going to have to. And staff members are going to have to. Everybody's going to have to. Anybody associated with it is going to have to be very responsible in the way that they handle this to make it work. We'll see if having been in a bubble scenario helps that process, and you don't see some of the issues that it sounds like we've seen with the Marlins and the Cardinals, and what we've seen with some college football programs with, and college sports programs with parties, with going out to clubs, going out to nightclubs, with Aberdeen going out to the bars. Hopefully, MLS having gone through the bubble, they have a different understanding of what it takes to be safe. That's what you're going to have to be banking on here.
And you have MLS just announcing the next stage, because information changes, situations change, and states could be in better situations after this next window than they are right now. And so it's taking the information that's in front of you and not going too far ahead to where you would have to completely upset your plan that you have on paper, wad it up, throw it in the garbage, and come up with something else. You're taking a measured approach about trying to complete something so that your business and your fellow businessmen can at least have some revenue coming in and can have some aspect of their business work. And so I think the measured approach by MLS is something, obviously, to keep an eye on, but I think this is the best way to go about it, so you're not sitting there and slamming a schedule together and saying that this is it in stone, and then have something go wrong and they have to readjust. And so I think that taking the information from stage 2, applying it forward to stage 3 and stage 4, if you want to go 6, 6, and 6, and sit there and say, okay, this stage, the next stage, and the final stage before you go into playoffs. It's just taking all that information in front of you, making informed decisions about how to function going forward. And I think that's the key here.
Yeah. Just like restaurants, grocery stores, retail, offices, everybody who is trying to operate somewhat normally right now, just like all of that, you have to do it safely. I mean, pro sports and college sports is no different in that. You have to be able to guarantee safely. It's really, really difficult. I'm just intrigued to see how this plays out, and it's got to be safe. And I hope that everybody involved in interaction, so players, so staff, anybody who would be inside that. I'm not sure how they're going to term it. We've seen it in other leagues where they talk about like a tier 1, or they put colors on it. Whoever's going to be inside that protected space, which would be, your game day personnel on the field. No, it's not even that, because you can have differences. Like you can have press box personnel who have no interaction with the people in the tier 1. The tier 1 is who's testing every other day. The tier 1 is who has all these protocols. Tier 2 is separate. We'll see how MLS divides that up, by the way, in games in this phase. I hope they put that out, and I hope they're very clear about it. It's important. I hope that everybody inside that understands the responsibility they have, because we saw it with Aberdeen, and we saw the comments from the Scottish government about this, because yeah, absolutely. I mean, Scotland's much smaller than the United States, obviously, but those players put their teammates, their fellow staff members at risk. They've also been part of what has contributed to a spread in the city of Aberdeen. Like, you can't do that. You just can't do that. You can't be that person. Not when you're having a way to get back and do your job, where some others can't. You know, like that's the reality here. Is there are some people who cannot do their jobs in a normal way. In pro sports, you can if you live up to that responsibility.
Chris Ashley is in this morning on the Twitters, and he says, here's an Overreaction Monday topic headline.
Uh-oh.
Former MLS player announced as new boss of Juve. Loved listening to Jason preemptively and rightfully call this idea crazy on the Power Hour prior to the announcement.
It's crazy. It's risky.
Did you see what Gattuso said?
What did Gattuso say?
Well, he's screwed now.
You're leaving a whole lot of context out of that, John.
I'm getting there.
Well, okay, so you're trying to mislead people. Is that what you're telling me? Mm-mm. You're playing media games, John.
He says, well, he's screwed now. That's the job, Gattuso told Sky Italia. He's lucky to be starting at Juventus, but this profession is one where a great playing career is not enough. You have to study, to work hard, and you don't get much sleep. See,
if you said that to Gattuso, he would start singing. Pancake. That's a pancake move.
Being a player and being a coach is really not the same thing at all. It's a totally different profession, and we can't learn it just from books. We need to get in there and work hard. It's a different world.
Absolutely. The first part was joking, I think, more than anything. It's your legend becomes questioned when you become in charge as the manager. Antonio Conte said, I'm very curious about Andrea. In addition to all the quality he had as a player, he always gave me the idea of being an exceptional person, and I have a great affection for him. However, I must confess that I feel old when I see players I have trained become coaches. Also true. Look, it's hard. I've said it. I feel like the biggest challenge for him, the tactics he's going to have to develop. He's got to hire a really good number two to run the training sessions, to help with the tactical game plan, to help with the scouting, all those things that Pirlo hasn't done. Where he can be really effective is in terms of putting an arm around a young player and saying, hey, when I was in this scenario, I handled this. I did this way. You're going to get players who have the utmost respect for Pirlo. We talked about it with Diego Maradona and Gimnasia, and Maradona has some coaching experience, but at Gimnasia, when he first came in, the work rate from those players increased exponentially because they didn't want to let a legend down. That's going to happen at Juventus, at least for a while. Now, there's also rumors that Cristiano Ronaldo might want out because he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, and there was talk when the Matuidi stuff started about potentially Pirlo wanting to go with younger players, and that's part of this whole process, which is really interesting. I didn't think Juventus would go down that road. I thought they would keep, pushing at the whole idea of the Scudetto is nothing to even worry about anymore. We're going to win that without even trying. We have to win the Champions League. But if you're going to go with a manager like Pirlo, you have to give, some kind of a learning curve here. And it's the good time to go with young players because is Cristiano Ronaldo going to have the same respect level for an Andrea Pirlo as a young player coming up would? No. He played against him. He'd respect him, but he would be looking for something different out of a manager than a young player on the way up who's incredibly talented, but, just reveres Pirlo. So you've got to go younger. And that's some of the talk. That's why Matuidi became available. It's why others have become available. You're going to have to go down that road to make it work for him. Can it? Yeah, it can. I would rarely say that this is just the dumbest move and it's not going to work. It's a risky move, though. Mm-hmm. It's very, very risky. And I know people have compared it to Zidane. Zidane had been an assistant. He had learned under Jose Mourinho. He had managed the second team at Real Madrid. He had started his badges and his education well before he got the job. That was his first job, but it wasn't his first managerial experience. Pep Guardiola had started managing at Barcelona B the year before, got them promoted back into the second division. before taking the job. Those were risky too. This is risky on another level. This is going to be down to the personality of Andrea Pirlo. If he is able to manage through his personality and get performances out of these players, he's got to have the right team around him to help with everything else outside of that. But if he can lift this group with his personality and the respect they have for him, he can be effective. I think he'll need a younger group to be able to do that, and that's going to take a lot of changing of this roster. It wasn't good enough for Sarri. The roster, they didn't give him what he needed. He did not have everything he needed. I think he did about what he could do with that team. Pirlo's probably going to have less because you're going to have to go young. They're going to have to accept, and maybe this was part of the process, and we've had this conversation about other clubs in this situation. If you're going to have to rebuild, it's really good when you can rebuild with a club legend who is going to take less stick from the fan base straight away. If you brought in, Jim Smith to be the manager at Juventus, the expectations would be he has to win Champions League tomorrow. Is that the expectation for Andrea Pirlo right now? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the expectation at all. So in a way, you've dumbed down those expectations a bit by making this hire. You're going to give him some time to grow, and it allows you to rebuild, which you needed to do anyway. So maybe it's a masterstroke. Maybe it's a huge risky move. It's all going to be down to what he gets out of this group right now with his personality, because he's not going to get it out of his tactics. He's not going to get it out of his training sessions, his scouting. He's going to get this out of being able to inspire performances out of his players.
And for me, I'll reemphasize the point that I made in the Power Hour, that sometimes you have athletes who turn into coaches, and there's that self-imposed expectation between the ears by that superior, incredible athlete that these guys should be playing the way that I have, and that everything should be as easy for them as it was for me, those kinds of things. And I think that that's something that just has to be monitored. I think that Thierry Henry had that when he was at Monaco. There was that self-imposed expectation that I'm teaching these guys how to do something, and I did it, so they should be able to do it either to the level that I'm expecting instantaneously or to my level. And I think that has to be tempered by Pirlo as he's going into this. It's like, grow them in what I'm saying is grow them in their own abilities. Don't grow them in your own image is what I'm basically saying.
Of course you're going to go negative with it.
That's what I'm here for.
You are the biggest negative person. You're not going to try to find any positive out of it. Yeah, of course he can't do that. I mean, that is a challenge that happens with former athletes becoming coaches, is they can't relate to somebody who didn't see the game their way. Some can. Zidane has been pretty successful. Mm-hmm. Guardiola has been pretty successful. Larry Bird was a very successful coach with the Indiana Pacers. I would have loved to have seen him do more of it, but he didn't want to. He didn't need to. So he didn't want to deal with that stress. But he was really good as a coach. And you've seen great players fail horribly as coaches too, and usually for the reasons that John outlines. I'm going to give Pirlo the benefit of the doubt until he shows that he can't handle that. Guy's been around the block. He's a smart guy, and hopefully that will serve him well for Juventus' sake. And I know some people don't really care about Juventus' sake, and now they want to see them fall on their face, and they very well could. Doc Rivers, good point, Abby. Doc Rivers has been a very, very good coach. It can happen. Christopher Abel with a question, a couple of things I mentioned. Thoughts on whether managing a second team adequately prepares someone for first team management. At a second team, there's no pressure to get results. You don't really need to be a great tactician either. You just follow the first team coach's lead. To a degree, yeah. Depends on the club. Some clubs give a little more leeway than that. Some don't. It depends. But yeah, you're not going completely off the board from what the first team's doing. I think it's a better starting point than being an assistant. I think it's an easier transition going from a second team to the first team than going from the assistant to the first team, because you're managing a team. Like, even with some of those limitations, not just going and doing whatever you want, you do have to develop players for the second team, and that's something that is a bit of a lost art with a first team for some clubs. Again, Zidane did it. Guardiola did it. It can be a really good launching pad. Is it a magic blueprint? No, there's not one. That's the thing, is there's not some magic blueprint. There's not, okay, go be an assistant here, go coach U10s first, and then go coach U15s next, and then go be an assistant, and then go be a second team manager, and follow this to the T. You can't do that. It's down to the individuals, and it's down to, honestly, in my opinion, how flexible they can be. And flexible can go a bunch of different ways, because you see managers who are very good with their first choice group, but when you have an injury, they can't figure it out. You see managers that don't make good, substitutions or tactical changes in a match. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to adjust. You have to have a plan, but you have to be able to adjust and see things quickly. Being in charge of a second team, being in charge of any team, honestly, can really help you with that, because you're asked to do that. If you are just an assistant and you've never had coaching experience and you go in to be the head coach, that can be tougher to me, because you're used to offering advice, offering suggestions, not making decisions. That's different. So I think it helps. I don't think it's a magic blueprint, but I think it does help.
Nick is in with a couple of thoughts. He says...
hold on before Nick. Check me on this. Ricky's asking, was Larry Bird a good coach? I thought he was. No, I'm asking you. Like, you don't have to look it up. I don't care about how many wins he had. He took the Pacers to the finals.
Yeah.
And the Pacers they hadn't been to the finals.
Yeah. No, I mean...
I thought he was.
I thought he was too. But now that the question's up, I'm looking at the stats all over again. So,
I thought he was. And I thought he walked away because he didn't want to deal with it anymore, because he didn't have to. And
lost in the conference finals for the first 2 seasons he coached, and lost in the NBA finals his 3rd year as a coach, and then packed it in after that.
So 3 years, 2 conference finals, 1 NBA final. The Pacers hadn't been in conference finals before him, and they weren't after. So I'm going to say he was a good coach.
Yep.
I think he could have gotten even better, but yeah, didn't want to do it. Anyway, back to Nick.
So there you go. So Nick's comparing the Pirlo move to Steve Kerr.
Well, how is he comparing it to Steve Kerr?
That's where we need the detail. So Nick let us know. He says it's a Steve Kerr move with Pirlo.
Why don't you explain Steve Kerr to people who don't know Steve Kerr?
Steve Kerr, shooting guard / point guard for the Chicago Bulls in the Jordan time. And you knew that with Steve Kerr, because of his, and this is going to sound incredibly stereotypic, because of his basketball IQ, because of how he handled himself on the court, wanted to learn off the court, you knew that coaching was going to be that path. And so you have the intelligent ball player who is becoming a coach with limited coaching experience going in, and now I have to see what his coaching experience actually was before he took the Golden State job. Because I want to say
this is why I disagree with Nick, and we'll get into it on Soccer Over There tonight, hopefully. He retired as a player. He went into broadcasting. Then he was an executive with Phoenix. Then he became a head coach.
Okay, there we go.
So there was a gap after he left. This is it's not quite Jason Kreis. I mean, Jason Kreis was a player. Coach is fired. He retired. He put on a suit. He's the manager the next day, and he won MLS Cup in a couple of years later. Steve Kerr, and this part is very accurate to the comparison of Kerr. Ricky Ricardo says he also walked into a Lamborghini and he didn't crash it. He did elevate it. He did make it run better. You have to give him credit for that. He took them further than Mark Jackson did. Can Pirlo come in with less time, with less time to study the game, with less time to maybe have a bigger understanding than his role in the game? Although if he was, thinking these ways and studying these things as he was a player, you can bridge that gap. But can Pirlo come in and not crash the Lamborghini?
Yeah.
Can he come in and make it run better? I think he's changing the car. That's the thing, is I think he's coming in and selling the car and getting a different model. And that's where it's a different conversation. If they chop and change this roster in some big ways, and maybe not, but the tea leaves are leading us to potentially, could Ronaldo want out? Matuidi's going to go. Could you move on from the other 30-year-olds plus and build around a younger team? That would suit Pirlo more. I think he'd get more out of that.
Nick's details. Nick says, analyst with TNT, no coaching experience, but dropped right into the Golden State role because of his hoops IQ.
There was a long time. I mean, that executive time, I think, is what changes the paradigm. He retired in 2003. He became the coach in 2014. So that's a lot of time. And, you don't really have the equivalent of the coaching courses and things like you do in soccer, but that's a lot of time to think about what you would do as a coach, as opposed to Pirlo, who, it's been, a couple of years since he retired as a player, and he hasn't really done anything in the game. He just started his badges last year. So it's a little different. I'll be curious to see how it plays out. It's something that potentially Roma could be looking at as well, according to a few conversations in Italy, that new owner Friedkin could look down the road of bringing Totti back as the sporting director and bringing De Rossi back as a manager. Now, personality-wise, I feel like, just the way they played and the way they are, De Rossi has a better chance to be a manager in this scenario than Pirlo does. He would also be at a club that would have different expectations. And he's, Roma through and through, so he would get even more leeway to learn and build on the job. That would be more successful to me in terms of, does he become a better manager? Pirlo's going to have more resources and more to work with potentially. So Chris with a good point. He says, Pirlo is only walking into a 2014 Lamborghini. It's a used old car. It's a really good old car, but yeah, you need to upgrade to a newer model. And I think they're going to have to do some upgrading big time, or it doesn't matter who the manager is.
And you can, I guess, talk about this a little bit now and talk about it, tonight as well. But Nick thinks also that Matuidi is a great signing for Inter Miami. He'll be a star on South Beach.
No, understand what I'm saying. He's a good signing. I don't know if he's a great signing. He can be a star in this league. He doesn't solve their problems. That's great. He doesn't solve their problems. Somebody has to score goals. Matuidi hasn't scored goals in his career. Somebody has to be better with that team defensively. Maybe Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez fixes everything on the back line. I'm not 100% sure of that. I think there's still questions. Could he be fine? Yeah, don't misunderstand me on this. I have, and maybe I'm the only one who has it. Whenever a player like this gets signed, I think there's this expectation they're going to come in and walk over the league. I don't think that's necessarily true. I also don't think it changes the paradigm off the field for who Miami is. It's a good signing. It's going to get some worldwide attention. Does it change anything in Miami? Maybe short term of, wow, they're taking this really seriously. That's a lot of money they spent on him. Okay. He's not a player that if you go ask, you go ask a youth club, tell me about Blaise Matuidi. And you go ask from the U12s to the U19s. You're not going to get a lot of answers. He's a very good player. But I don't think he's what they needed at all. I think they needed to spend on a number 9, no questions asked. Because now I don't know how they get a number 9. Unless they can buy down Pellegrini's contract as well. Because they're going to have to buy down Carranza's. I don't know. I don't know where the number 9 comes from. They needed to go get a bigger number 9. That would have been a better move.
Gamey Muffin has a laws of the game question for the morning.
Oh, boy. I might have an answer.
Okay. Nathan Pugh's in. He goes, and for his hashtag Monday something. That's what his hashtag is.
Okay.
He says, the laws now make it easier to play out of the back, and sometimes it may be good. Sometimes it may be Varane. To counteract, Will tactics devolve, in quotation marks, to huffing it long, or will you just see better ball players like Kevin De Bruyne playing across the back? Meaning, many more teams have adopted the out-of-the-back method, some to their demise, like Bournemouth. Do you think the way forward is for more teams to adopt this style, or do you think Jose pragmatism will return like high-waist pants, ironically cool?
It's not going to be all one or all the other. It never will be. That's the thing about the game. You're never going to see everybody say, oh, man, Varane gave up 2 goals really badly, so we can't play short in the back ever again. Let's hoof it long. That doesn't suit a bunch of teams. It would be foolish. There are teams who shouldn't play out of the back. Varane had a bad day. Like, let's not overstate it. He had a bad day. Real Madrid can build out of the back. They've done it all year long. It is in my opinion, the way to have the most control. You play it long, you're 50-50. Yeah, you might have somebody who's better in the air, shades it to 60-40. Okay. Nobody's winning 100% of their aerial challenges. It's not happening. Guys who are in those situations, you're winning 50, you're winning 55, you're winning 60. You're getting over 60, you're doing really, really well. What's better? If you can build out of the back effectively, you have the ball. You control the ball. You're not putting it up in a 50-50 or a 60-40 challenge. That's why teams do it. If you don't have the players who can do it, then, yeah, you have to sacrifice and play long and then hope to win the second ball. But you're going to see teams do different things. It's going to depend on the team. You can't just say that because it's risky, you can't do it. Like there's a Twitter account, which I guess is very funny. Maybe I missed the joke. When playing out of the back goes wrong. And I think the implication is, well, you can't play out of the back. No, you absolutely play out of the back. You don't make those mistakes. But that's the trade-off. How often do you see those mistakes? Not that often. Not with a team that plays out of the back because they work on it. When teams just all of a sudden decide to play out of the back and don't work on it, then, yeah, they're going to make mistakes because they're not prepared to do it. You have to work at it, and what it does when it's effective is it draws the other team up. They come up to try to take the ball from you. John, you're talking to your remote control?
Yeah, I wanted to change the channel, but I didn't want it to be audible.
Chris Ashley saying breaking news sounder. I don't know why.
Okay. I don't know why either.
Oh, you're not helping me, John. Chris Ashley, you want to share this with us real quick?
Yeah, share it with us.
Ay, Dios mío.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, okay, it's his. There we go. So, okay, we'll give this. Greenville Triumph will allow fans in attendance on Saturday. Press release is coming. So, Chris Ashley's breaking news on the show. Good stuff.
Okay, there you go.
I want to hear the protocols for sure. I want to hear how they're going to do it. And, yeah, now when that happens, the fans have a responsibility as well. Talked about it from the players and talked about it from the staff. When there's fans in the building, they have a responsibility to follow all the protocols and do things correctly. And please, if you're in the front row, wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to be that close to the field, wear a mask. Please, just wear a mask in general. But if you're there, like, make sure you have your mask on almost all the time. Please, 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 please. Playing out of the back is a good thing because it draws the other team to you. You play through them. You have more space to operate in. If you can't exploit that space, then, yeah, you got to take another way. Some teams will do that. Some teams won't. There is no one way to play. There never will be one way to play this game. Never, never, never. It's just like any sport. There's no one strategy because then everybody plays the same way and it's boring. And you don't play to your strengths. You know, if you build a team that can play out of the back, you play out of the back. If you build a team that can play out of the back, but you choose not to play out of the back, then you're not getting the best out of your talent. So you're going to see different approaches. But no, I don't think Varane having a couple mistakes is going to lead to teams not playing out of the back. I hope not. That's bad for the game, in my opinion. I'd much rather try to build up out of the back if I have the team to do it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of camped out on the Greenville news. So
it's coming within the hour. There's no reason to camp out. We have somebody, in the chat who's probably going to let us know.
Okay. So Chris Ashley will let us know.
I need you to focus, John. I need you to focus so you can tell everybody about Steve Apolinsky right about now.
Attaboy. Steve Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. Steve Apolinsky is the head of that pyramid. AA-legal.com, wrongful death and serious injury matters. If this is an unfortunate road that you have to go down, catch up with Steve. and the folks at Apolinski and Associates. So, a couple different ways that you can do that for his 30 years of experience and his $40 million of judgments for wrongful death and serious injury matters in Georgia and Alabama. Go to aa-legal.com, hit the enter button. Guess what happens? Pop-up window, lower right-hand corner, because it pops up. That's why they call them pop-up windows. You can have a live chat with somebody 24/7, 365, or 366 in a year like this. You can also fire off an email directly to Steve, Steve at aa-legal.com, or give him a buzz at 404-377-9191. Get a free consultation on your situation. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine. Top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia, where SDH has its HQ. The website, aa-legal.com.
All righty then. What else is on the Twitters?
We're caught up on Twitters. What's going on Twitch?
People are talking on Twitch. No, they're just talking. That's what happens. That's a good thing. It's not lobbing just questions at us. It's different. That's the thing. Twitch is a conversation during the show. Sometimes things are being thrown our way, absolutely. And sometimes people are talking about option and wishbone and triple option and all these things. That can happen too, and that's a really good thing about it. So let's jump into some other news from around at the moment. In MLS, this is coming out of Pulso Sports, and it had gotten some traction down in South America. We know Ecuador has an opening for their national team manager. Jordi Cruyff was there for a period of time, and I don't know if he was actually in Ecuador, and then you have a coronavirus outbreak, and then you have money issues, and he's not there. Reportedly, the board is voting tomorrow on who to try to move forward with, and Guillermo Barros Escaloto is part of that conversation. Now, he has said that he's not interested. Don't know if he's playing the media game, the agent game or not, but that's still continuing to move forward, so we'll see. Cincinnati, you've got rumors saying that Mario Götze is doing a medical with Cincinnati. You've got others saying that he's not doing a medical, but they're very interested. He's out of contract. He's another one like his. I had to go back and look because I'd kind of not forgotten about him, but forgotten about his story. He has really fallen off at Dortmund. He's 28 years old. He's out of contract, so he's available on a free. He really hasn't played much in the last couple of years. He started 5 games for Dortmund this past year. Michael Zorc in May said that Götze would leave the club at the end of the season. There were people saying that he needs to get away from Dortmund. He needs to get away from the Bundesliga to try to find his game again. It's a really odd situation because, he missed out on the 2018 World Cup. He scored the goal in 2014 to win the World Cup. A lot of people don't really know where he's going to fit. He has gone from being... In 2010, Matthias Sommer said that Götze was one of the best talents Germany has ever had. Beckenbauer called him the German Messi for his speed and his style of play. To the point that now it's like he's an afterthought, and nobody's after him in Germany. It's a great get for Cincinnati if you can get him, but what is he at this point? Is it mental? Is it physical? He did have some injuries. He had some issues with a medical condition that affected him for a while. What is it? Because at 28, he should not be a player based off what we've seen who is available on a free. And looking at Cincinnati as a landing spot, I was blown away by it, but I haven't heard any other rumors about him either. He was in March of 2017. It was reported he had been suffering from a metabolic disorder, myopathy. It's a muscular disorder that affects the fibers in the muscles. They don't function correctly. He underwent treatment on it, and I don't know if that kind of started this or not. It's a really interesting situation, a player that I would have never guessed would have been available to a Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's that one salvo of news that yes, he's taking a physical, and then it's immediately refuted, and so
well, no. It wasn't refuted in that like he's not a target and there's no conversations. It was just the question about was he taking a medical was back and forth. I mean, that's a minor element.
But no, if you wonder with someone who is 28, I mean, you mentioned the medical issue, and is that under control? Is it being monitored? What's his health status? I mean, yes, if there is something that is still there for Mario Götze at the age of 28, I think it would be a fantastic get for FC Cincinnati. But really, where his health is and the lack of minutes, those kinds of things, I still am missing some information here, but would love to see it if he comes over here on a free.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at what he's done the last couple of years. So 515 minutes in the last season for Dortmund, 5 starts, 15 matches, 3 goals. Previous year, 19 starts, 26 matches, 1,680 minutes. He scored 7 goals. 2017-18, started 19 matches, played in 23, scored 2 goals. He hasn't scored double-digit goals since 2014 with Bayern. He wasn't the same player at all at Dortmund that he was at Bayern. Honestly, he hasn't been a player who's played more than 2,000 minutes in a season since 2015. So, questions. We'll have to see. His whole career has been just very, very strange, and I agree with the idea that he needs a change of scenery. That's for sure. I would not have expected that change of scenery to be Cincinnati, but at his age, he could be a player who comes over here and does really well and then gets an opportunity back in another club. We'll see. Christopher asked about Dom and Torres and when they'll arrive and be eligible. They're here, they're training, and they'll be eligible to play in the next game. The transfer window opens Wednesday after the match. The tournament's over. So they'll be both ready to go and eligible to play.
I have some stuff on the board about Messi and what he told his teammates at halftime.
What did he tell his teammates at halftime? Because I saw that some words were bleeped out.
Yes. Video circulating on social media. He could be heard shouting in the Nou Camp tunnel, quote, "We're going to come out strong. We have a 2-goal lead. Let's not be a-holes. Now we have to be calmer than ever. Let's play quietly. Let's make it 8. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't have a problem with that. They came out, and I thought the referee had a bad day all the way around. Took a goal away from Messi. That one thing to understand about this: handball on an attacking player, there's no intent decision. It's just if it comes off their hand or their arm and it would be a handball, then you call it. So it becomes in that situation like offside where it's not a clear and obvious mistake. If it comes off their hand and you can see it comes off their hand, then you have to call it. I didn't see a video that I still haven't seen a video that it definitively came off his hand. I saw one that was blurry because it had been zoomed in so far that maybe it came off his hand. Unless you knew for sure, I don't think that one should have come back. I don't think the first goal should have stood for Barcelona. I mean, there's a clear push on the set piece. Like, it's blatantly obvious, and they don't call that one back. So, referee had a bad day. Messi scored an unbelievable goal. Napoli, but Napoli had a chance early that would have changed everything. If Dries Martins scores that goal at the very beginning, I think Napoli goes through. They don't put that one away. He snatches at the chance, and then Barcelona comes down and kills you. You can't give Messi chances to do that. You have to put them away when the opportunities present themselves. And Barca was a mess defensively at the very beginning. Dries Martins with a huge opportunity coming off of Piqué. He misses it. Barcelona, 10, 15 minutes later, goes down and starts to bury you. Can't do that.
And then the presence of mind, the sticking with a play like you see with Messi on the PK chance that eventually happens because of Koulibaly and Messi coming in from behind to try to steal the ball. I thought it was, it just kind of, for me, it was indicative of how the day was going. Barcelona just stays with it. You have another moment like that. Suarez puts it away, and then it's that emphasizes that it was done at that point.
Ragamuffin says, I want handball anarchy. No, I don't. I just, in that case, I don't think it was clear that it was a handball, period. I thought it came off his chest. And also, like, the whole thing that they did when they changed the handball rule at the beginning of this season that we're still finishing in Europe, I think they made it worse, not better, with this idea that there's no intent conversation at all for an attacking player. If it comes off the arm, you have to call it. But if it's a defender in that scenario, you are managing intent where the arm is and where the positioning is. It shouldn't be different. If you're going to go one way or the other, it has to be the same for everybody. That's my issue. Jason Nix says, yeah, I never saw it hit the hand or the arm. I saw it hours later, a still frame zoomed in that was super blurry that still didn't definitively make it clear for me. I was blown away that one was pulled back. I just did not expect that one to come back at all.
Let's see. We've got news about Jadon Sancho hopping on a plane. Atletico Madrid news.
Go ahead with your tease. You just did one. Go ahead and finish.
Well, which one?
Jadon Sancho hopping on a plane. I wonder where he could be going. Where's he going, John? Tell us.
He's staying with his team. He's not going to Manchester United.
Bump. Well, they haven't got the deal done, so there's no, he's not going to Manchester United.
Borussia Dortmund holding out for 108 million pounds.
Well, they've come down. It was 120.
So they've come down 10%. And so they've been haggling for a couple of weeks now on Jadon Sancho. But Jadon Sancho hopped on a plane with Borussia Dortmund, and apparently, this is apparently now, Manchester United might have missed the deadline for the Jadon Sancho deal.
No, they missed the deadline for him not to go to preseason training. And Dortmund is playing hardball, and they're saying that they're not going to negotiate after that point. If a check for 108 million pounds shows up, they'll negotiate.
You're gonna say no to a 108 million pound check?
Yeah, it's all negotiation. But yes, he did get on a plane to go join Dortmund's preseason. Abby talking about the handball situation, and I'm with this. If the arm's at your side and it gets hit by the ball, should not be called if it's defense or offense. And it doesn't if it's defense. If your arms are down, people have misled viewers so often with this about this whole thing about you have to put your arms behind your back. You can't have your arms out if you're a defender anymore. No, that's not the case. The rule actually clarified you can absolutely have your arms by your side. You can't have your arm out in front of you. You can't have your arm out to the side, but you can have your arms down. If they are in a normal position and your silhouette is normal, you're fine. Not going to call that. Even to the point they've clarified that if you are, and this is kind of stretching that a little bit further, but if you are sliding and your arm is on the ground, so you're bracing yourself on the ground, that's not a handball. I'm okay with that. There's really not much else you can do with your arm there. So, okay, that's fine. They've clarified those for defenders. But for attackers, those are handballs because it just came off the hand. There's no question about anything else. It shouldn't be different. It just shouldn't be different either way. It's crazy. Okay, thank you, Bernd. It's still euro. It was 120 million euro, the pounds versus euros conversation. So nothing's changed. No discount yet. Dortmund's still holding firm on 120 million euro, 108 million pounds.
Rich Ransom is in this morning with a question to the floor.
Okay.
Are boarding schools like IMG Academy what's best for U.S. soccer development?
You can do boarding schools a lot of different ways. You can do residency programs a lot of different ways. IMG didn't produce that much.
IMG to me is a beautifully integrated business model, but I'm looking at it from the American football perspective.
Well, you're looking at it from the negative perspective either. You act like no players ever come through there, and that's not true. It's good for some kids. It's good for some players who respond to it if they, connect with the right coach, and that's all sports. So you've got football, you've got basketball, you've got like individual sports. I want to say tennis is a pretty big deal. You don't have to look it up. It's no big deal.
I'm curious now.
Oh, jeez. I shouldn't have said it. So can it be? Yeah. But it's not for everybody. Some players benefit more from being at home. Some players benefit more from getting away from home. So it's an option, but you're seeing Philadelphia with, a school program attached to theirs, that they're going down a road similar to that. Atlanta doesn't have a residency program in the same way that others do. I think RSL has a pretty strong residency program. A lot of teams are starting to think about this and bring in players from outside of their system. It's all about what's best for that player. You've had success stories from IMG, and you've had plenty of players who went to IMG and might have played 1 year as a pro. So it's player development is like tactics to me. There is not one way to do it. And people will try to sell you that their way that they're trying to sell you on is the way. There's not. Otherwise, everybody would be doing the same thing around the world, and everybody play the game the same way. And it's not how it works.
8 sports at IMG Academy, including baseball, basketball, boys and girls, football, golf, lacrosse, soccer, tennis, and track and field.
Yeah, and I mean they've been doing stuff for a while, even before the schooling component came in. So it can really work for some. The individual is the difference, and it's the same for their whole career. I mean, I've mentioned it with Landon Donovan a ton. If Landon Donovan had listened to critics and stayed in Germany and not come back to MLS, he would not have been the player that he turned into. He wasn't happy. He wasn't comfortable. He didn't enjoy the game. He didn't enjoy his time. He's not going to play well. He came back to MLS. Everybody's like, he's not testing himself. He's not testing himself. He's not going to be as good as he could. I think he was as good as he could be. That was his ceiling, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Some guys go and get challenged and get better. That's good too. There's just no blueprint. So much of it with the youth side, to me, is the relationship with the club and the manager that you're at. And that's more important than anything. It's far more important than winning games. It's far more important than results as a youth player. You've got to enjoy the game. That's number one. You've got to be with a manager who is nurturing and helping you grow, somebody who is pushing you to get better and helping you get there. You've got to be in those situations more than, is it IMG, is it residency, or is it staying at home? It's all different. It's all different. Every kid is a different individual. So I don't think there's one way. I don't think that's the case in any country. Although smaller countries can have a more unified player development system, as we saw from the Das Reboot situation in Germany, where they went to a more structured, top-down way to develop players. The United States is massive, and the United States doesn't have a consistent soccer identity, so I don't think it would ever happen here. There's going to be certain clubs in certain regions that create mini Germanys, like miniature Germanys in that, where in the South, for example, if Atlanta United continues to grow as a club, develop talent as a club, and further build out a philosophy of playing and a game model, you're going to see, one, the best talent come here, and two, other clubs in the region emulate that. So you'll have that effect. Whereas in the Pacific Northwest, they could look at it differently. Like right now, I don't know if Seattle or Portland really has a game model, a game philosophy. LAFC does. You've got another team in town that does it differently, but LAFC could be that in Southern California. Matias Almeida and what the Earthquakes are doing could be that in Northern California, and clubs around could say, you know what, we really like this, and we want our kids to end up with the Earthquakes. We're going to play that style. We're going to play in that way. And it starts to become something that becomes more consistent. It's going to be really interesting. Some questions about that topic. It's a good one from Rich Ransom. Adam from 816 said, IMG and others are useful to the markets without MLS or USL academies. They can be, although there are clubs outside of MLS and USL that do really good work in developing talent. They are out there. I'm fascinated to see what this MLS development plan is now and how it looks going forward, with so many clubs from the outside that are in there because of a shared mentality. Inter Atlanta Lanier Soccer Association here in the metro area, Two clubs who have not been in the development academy, have kind of been off to the side of that. They're in this. Does this elevate them to where, you're producing more players outside of the MLS clubs, outside of the IMGs? It could. I think there's still a lot of room to grow, but there are some markets where a player doesn't have to go to IMG. They can go to their local club and do really well. There's some managers, just coaches in different markets who are just really good at developing talent. Some of them we don't really know because those kids are outside the mainstream and we never really hear about them, and that's a shame. That's where the scouting from a coaching and a player perspective from U.S. Soccer has to get better, and from the MLS teams. They're the ones who are going to have to take the lead in that too. Katie Weaver said, just talking in general about Pulisic and Chelsea, and we'll talk about Pulisic's development for a second. A lot of people have said, Pulisic went to Germany when he was super young, and that's why he became what he was. He was in Pennsylvania for a pretty long time. Now, Pulisic was lucky that his father was a former professional. That's going to help with your development, obviously, at home. His father was a coach, so he was in good clubs in Pennsylvania. And then he got the opportunity to go to Dortmund at the right time. He also had the resources as a kid to go train at Barcelona and go train at different big clubs around the world. Your average kid doesn't have that. So he had some advantages, absolutely, that helped him. A little different. Chris Ashley tagged us on the press release from Greenville Triumph on Twitter.
Got it right here.
Okay. Yep. We'll get to that here in a second. So, yes, we are making the North Dakota references all day. Anthony Robinson to Sheffield United, that has happened as well. That was all but done earlier. We'll get into that here in a second. Christopher Abel says, I think the most important thing for a player is that they are comfortable and happy wherever they are. I think we saw this with Pitti early last season. He wasn't comfortable with the team yet, and it showed. Absolutely. I think he was just tired and stressed, and he wasn't comfortable yet, and it affected his game. I think Landon took a jump in his career when he came back to play in MLS, and as Ragamuffin points out, Ragamuffins booing him because he wanted to support Eltree in a commercial. He got paid. I don't care. He got paid. Everybody wants to hate on Landon for a lot of different reasons. I hope he got a good check for that. It was funny. I thought it was funny. I don't have, and I've made this clear many times, I don't have the same hatred for Mexico in terms of the soccer world that a lot of people do, because I coached a team of Mexican kids in East Point, and I have watched a lot of the Mexican game and the Mexican national team. When the U.S. plays them, it's super intense, and it's going to be nasty, and everything that's coming into it. I end up pulling for Mexico a lot of times in other games, so I'm not the person to yell at Landon Donovan for a commercial. Just, that's not me. Sorry. Let's go back to Anthony Robinson real quick. So Sheffield United have got him for £2 million. After Wigan was relegated and they lost their appeal, they did have a lot of people interested, and I wondered if Milan would come back in for him because they almost got him in the last window. But he is going to Sheffield United over West Ham, over West Brom. £2 million is nothing. That's a really good step for Anthony Robinson. Yeah,
I like that. Looking at Sheffield United as we did in the Premier League last season, a lot of strength at the back. They've got to find a new keeper now that the loan is over with Dean Henderson. But when you see guys like Baldock and Stevens and that base that they have back there, you add Anthony Robinson to the mix. I'm really looking forward to seeing year two at Sheffield United. I like this get for that price.
You'd have to tell me more because I think you watch Sheffield United more. Is he going to walk into a starting spot?
I think so.
At left back?
Ooh. That's Baldock and Stevens category. That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a good fight. Yeah, that's going to be a good fight in training camp.
I hope he plays, because if he doesn't, I don't know. I don't know what the point of going there is. We'll see. Yep. I don't want to see him sit the bench somewhere just because he's on a Premier League roster. That's not going to help him.
Right.
Atletico Madrid, 2 positive tests in their playing squad. They have resumed training. Everybody else has tested negative the following day. Everything has been confirmed at this point. They resume training today. They are set to play on Thursday against RB Leipzig in the Champions League quarterfinals. Atletico statement, first team squad and coaching staff underwent COVID-19 tests on Sunday. They all came back negative after 2 positive tests were registered following the previous tests on Saturday. I'm assuming from reading that they tested positive Friday. They were followed up on Saturday. They were positive again. So those 2 stayed positive. Everybody else went through more testing on Sunday and were negative, and they were negative in the previous round that people tested positive first. In keeping with health protocols, those who share a home with the 2 players who tested positive also received tests, which came back negative. So that's where it stands right now. But they're training, and everybody's tested negative, so they are still set to go for Thursday. Keep an eye on that situation as well, just in case. Let's go ahead and get to the Greenville Triumph press release.
All right, Greenville Triumph press release. They've announced the return of fans in a limited capacity for all remaining 2020 home matches at Legacy early. Approval has been granted from the South Carolina Department of Commerce on the club's plan to safely host fans in accordance with all local and state COVID-19 regulations. Beginning with the Saturday's match against Chattanooga, the Triumph will be able to welcome up to 2,000 fans depending on the impact of social distancing algorithms that will be used in conjunction with the club's ticketing system to safely seat fans. Approvals the club has received on the plan to allow for the return of fans include safety measures being taken such as, masks required for attendees at all times unless seated and actively eating or drinking, temperature checks upon entry, a no bag policy, medical and diaper bags are exempt, touchless payment options, cashless purchases strongly encouraged at all points of sale, additional hand washing and hand sanitizer stations located throughout the stadium concourse, safe disinfecting of seating, restrooms, and high-touch areas before, during, and after the match, tailgating and supporter marches prohibited, no post-match autograph sessions or direct contact with members of the Triumph playing or coaching staff will occur during the 2020 season, and there are links to click on at greenvilletriumph.com if you want more information.
Maybe Chris Ashley can chime in on this. You've got to do some things in these smaller venues to keep that separation between players and fans separate, because one is being tested and part of a protocol and the other is not. So how easy is that for Greenville? Can you keep the fans away from contact with the players? Another thing that pops out to me from that, and looking at the Birmingham game as well, and a lot of games around USLs, not just those teams, would it maybe make sense at this point to ban food and drink in the seating area? Because then you have to have your mask on at all times in the seating area.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there'd be a legal challenge to that, but can you maybe put a rule in place for that? I would think you could get that through, although I don't know. Maybe you could sue on that. Maybe it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be the most comfortable thing in the world. And if you're going to have a viewing area where people could watch but not have their mask on while they were eating or drinking, you'd have to be much further away from the field just for safety's sake. As we've said many times, like when you start talking CDC and risk of transmission, it's very low that a player who has taken a corner kick or a throw-in who is close by a person without their mask on, the risk of transmission is very low. But if there's a way to get rid of that, can you? Jason Nix is yelling at me, you got to drink beers at your seat. Was that the right accent, Nix? I hope it was close. Can we give? I know, like at Mercedes-Benz, and there's not going to be fans, but there are areas where people could watch and stand and drink their beer and be nowhere near the field. Mm-hmm. Chris Ashley comes back. The first row of the stands is elevated, probably 4-ish feet up, and there's a walkway in front of the front row. A point of pain as a front row for a front row season ticket holder. That being said, I think the distance between fans and players is quite substantial compared to other locations. Cool. And Nick's gave me a thumbs up on the accent. Good. You went beers, so I kind of went really southern with it.
A lot of E's there.
Yeah, there's a few E's, so I kind of went down that road. As long as you can keep the separation, hopefully you'll see a lot of people in masks. I don't know what the mask rules are in South Carolina and in Greenville right now. I get it. I understand it. I want them to do it safely, and I want them to do well with it. And again, I think there is a lot of responsibility on the supporters groups that are involved and the people in the community and influencers to understand what the responsibility is on the fan side. The players are dealing with a lot to be able to play in this scenario and entertain. And the fans, if they're going to be allowed in the building, they have a responsibility too. They have a very big responsibility to follow these protocols to the T and even go above and beyond. To go out of your way to make it safe for the people around you and for the players who are sacrificing to entertain you. So I hope that continues. It's something that I want to see more of in the soccer community in the United States. I hope Dallas does this. I hope RSL does this. Any other MLS teams that have fans on board. I hope the supporters groups who are a very vocal presence. It can't just come from the club, although it has to come from the club as well. I hope people, I guess, just convey that responsibility. Because, I keep thinking back to, I think it was the Bulgarian Cup final, where you come in and you have to have the mask on, you get your temperature checked as you come in, and then people, just stopped caring, took the masks off, went and stood behind the goals, and, just acted like nothing was going on. Can't do that. Can't do that. If you're going to be allowed in, it's just like the players are going to be allowed to play. There is a responsibility to go above and beyond to continue to do it. So I hope that becomes part of this conversation, because it's easy to have the conversation that a lot of people are having. Fans should be allowed everywhere. No restrictions. No fans should be allowed anywhere. Can we actually get to the real matter of this? Where places are going to be able to allow fans and open for business. That's the reality we're facing. We can not like it, whatever. It's going to happen, just like the grocery stores open. And I really hope that people are being smart and doing their things when I go to the store. I'm also going to protect myself when I go to the store and make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to protect myself. Yep. But I hope that everybody does it right, just like that. I hope that everybody does it right in these games. Let's talk about how to do it right. Let's talk about how to do this the correct way. I don't know. It's tough, because I completely understand why teams need to have fans in the building. These teams want to continue to be in business. Period. It's really that simple. These teams need the revenue. They need people in the building, just like your favorite local restaurant needs to find a way to seat however many people they can seat. If it's outside, if it's under a tent, whatever. They need to do that so they can stay in business and they can keep paying their employees. These things are all very, very possible. You can socially distance. You can be safe, as Nick says. You have to do the right things. And I'm with Nick's on this. I understand his mentality here completely. You put all the protocols in place. They are very important, and you have to have them. Mm-hmm. I feel pretty good, right now, going to Kroger. Kroger was one of the first in terms of putting masks on. And yes, that's where I do my grocery shopping. One reason, because they were one of the first ones to say that. I was doing that before because I felt more comfortable there than in other stores. But also, it's down to the people who are in there. You can have the protocols, and Nick says, it's not that the protocols I don't trust, it's the people. We've got to be better at explaining the reasons why, and then, setting the expectation and being very clear in why and understanding that responsibility. And then it is down the next step. Once all that's done and somebody doesn't want to follow it and somebody wants to put other people at risk, then the club or the stadium's got to kick them out. Then they've got to come back and be heavy-handed and say, no, you're not allowed in here anymore. You're not living up to the responsibility that you have to have here. You're not following the rules, the protocols. I hate that that's an issue, but it is, sadly.
Eric Englert's in this morning with an Atlanta United question.
What's up?
Given Glassey's comments about freeing of the attack, leading players to be more creative, do you see Atlanta United going back to more of a verticalidad style like Tata, or do you think they will maintain some aspects of possession but with just less structure?
Tata had possession. Tata Go back and look. Actually, I'll have to see if I can pull this up quickly. I might not be able to because sometimes these stats over time get a little bit harder to find. Tata Martino's team in 2018 was around the top of MLS in terms of possession. I'm thinking 58%. I could be wrong on that. I think they were at 58% in what their possession was. Let me see if I can find this real quick to try to make my point. 2017 actually wasn't that far off either. Might actually be up. Let's see here. So, yeah, 2017, Atlanta United second in the league in possession, 55.5%, right behind Kansas City, who was at 56%. So 55.5 was 2017. 2018, regular season, that actually fell a little bit. 53.1%. They were fourth in the league, but still very high in possession. You can be. I think the thing about verticalidad that maybe got twisted. The thing about verticalidad, the difference between Frank de Boer's possession for Atlanta United and Tata Martino's possession. Frank de Boer was more comfortable with more touches in his back line, building play up there, as opposed to the verticalidad way of possession, which was to play it into the other half as quickly as possible, hold it, and then bring everybody into the play. It's just different approaches. It doesn't change the possession issue, though, because it's all about how you get there. So from Tata Martino's verticalidad, you would see Leandro Gonzalez-Perez or Michael Parkhurst play quicker into the other half, and then everybody would come up to join. Now, the drawback from that is if you play quicker that way and you lose possession quickly, you're not structured to deal with the counter very well. The idea that didn't happen consistently, and it wasn't accomplished enough from Frank de Boer's Atlanta United. The idea was that by doing possession and building up out of the back, you are bringing the team up together in a structured way. So if you lose possession, you're better structured to deal with it. That didn't always happen. If you are building up out of the back, but you're keeping that structure, and you can do it quicker, cool, I'm all for it, because it limits your vulnerability to counterattacks. If you can't do that, then you negate the whole point of having the extra touches in the back, because those are riskier touches. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
If you're building up out of the back, but you're not staying organized when you get forward, it doesn't matter. If you are playing long and not winning that possession, if you're playing that vertical ball, that verticalidad style, but not getting it and keeping it in the other half, you're negating the advantage. Neither one's right or wrong, but you've got to have the follow-up to each one to make it work. So I don't think Stephen Glass is really down that road on either side. I think it's Stephen Glass wants to be a team that puts pressure on the opponent, not in terms of I don't want possession so I can press. His teams have always valued possession, mainly because that's what this club values. This club is always going to value having the ball. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have talented players, you want the ball at their feet. You know, if you're going to have a Miguel Almiron, if you're going to have a Tito Villalba, Julian Gressel, Pity Martinez, and Ezequiel Barco, a Darlington Nagbe, a Mateo Sosetu, if you have technicians with the ball, you want the ball with them. You don't want to play a situation where you don't have the ball. So you're always going to want the ball. That's not going to change. How you work with the ball is the part that can change back and forth. And I want to see from Steven, does that change dramatically? Or is it more of the... Because I think Leandro Gonzalez-Perez talked about this early last season. Now, it did open up as the year went on. You saw them playing more long balls as the year went on. But early on, they were very reluctant to play that long switch, that long diagonal that they did a lot of in 17 and 18. Again, verticalidad. Now, that changed, but I wonder if from day one the idea here is, look, if it's on, go. If it's on, play into the other half. If you see space and you can play that player in, especially Jurgen Damm and his speed, which gives you a whole different component. Because if you're able to play that big switch over the top and he can run, then you don't care about your possession, because if the ball ends up in the back of the net, you're good to go. So you've got some different elements to work with. I would tend to think that you could be a little more vertical than you were, as much as anything because of Dom's inclusion and his speed, than not wanting to build up out of the back. I think you'll build up out of the back when it's on, but you will have no problem in unleashing Dom's speed when that's on too. You'll just be a little more versatile. I think you'd like to be anyway.
Yeah. Europa League at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We have juice boxes. We have Inter and Bayer Leverkusen and Manchester United and FC Copenhagen. Doubleheader today, doubleheader tomorrow. Your juice box numbers.
Okay.
In the aggregate, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal. Inter against Bayer Leverkusen is a plus 112. Bayer Leverkusen is a plus 248. Your tied at 90 minutes option is plus 252. And Manchester United is a minus 476 against FC Copenhagen. FC Copenhagen, guess this number.
Plus 900.
Oh, no.
What?
Plus 1391.
Not touching it.
Your tied after 90 minutes option is at plus 609. So, yeah, FC Copenhagen, that's the biggest number we've seen in quite some time at a plus 1391 in the aggregate.
And these are single games, just like the Champions League. It's not first leg, second leg. These are singles. Inter and Leverkusen should be a fun one. I'll be keeping more of an eye on that one. Manchester United should take care of business. We've seen upsets, but they should take care of business.
Early numbers for tomorrow: Shakhtar Donetsk and Basel. Shakhtar minus 115. Basel is a plus 316. Wolves and Sevilla is the other one tomorrow. Early numbers: Wolves are at plus 250. Sevilla is a plus 124.
Well, we'll see how those change as we get closer.
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff, and the main room, the locker room, the clubhouse, whatever. Everybody's getting all fired up about lots of different things. I get it. I wish that the virus was not such a big part of the sports conversation right now. I really do. I think it has to be. Unfortunately, I think if it's not, you're leaving out a huge element to everything right now. And no, I try to stay away from you're right, you're wrong, and that kind of stuff, because I think this is far more nuanced and complicated than the conversation is generally. But it does affect everything, and it stinks. I wish we didn't have to talk so much about protocols. Much rather talk tactics and games. And, in some ways we're getting there, and in other ways we're not. So, we'll try to cover all of it as best we can. But the other sports conversation, too, is it has an effect on MLS. Ricky Ricardo with a good point here that could be interesting here is if college football doesn't play, and you're hearing all kinds of different things about that, yes, no, maybe, rumors, hot takes, what have you. If they don't, there's talk that the NFL could try to get into some of those TV windows. Well, if the NFL does or doesn't, because I think they'd have to make some pretty big changes to their TV contract to be allowed to do that. If they don't, MLS could have some potential opportunities to get into some better TV windows, especially those Saturday night games.
Yep.
So that's going to have an effect on MLS. And we know, obviously, if these schools, if the Power Five cancel football, they're canceling everything. So that wipes out college soccer this fall as well, on the men's and the women's side, which is a real shame. But right now you're down to the Power Five that's really left looking at college soccer this fall. So there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of things that affect it. Christopher Abel says that Copenhagen draw number is a little high. Copenhagen should just park the bus and hope. I don't think there's enough buses. I don't see it. I'm not expecting it. Nix asks about how we're going to broadcast the Atlanta United games. We will be broadcasting from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The for the home games, obviously, and it's not 100% yet, but it's almost that we'll be doing the away games from there as well. It doesn't make sense because, just logistics. We'll go through it real quick, why it doesn't make sense. We would have to travel separately from the team because we're not part of the MLS protocols. So we're not testing the same way. So there's no point in us being on that plane and putting people at risk. So we'd have to travel separately. And they're also not staying overnight, so there's no hotel issues there. We'd have to do that on our own if we want. I don't really want to do that. So we'd have to find a way on commercial flights, which is not exactly a comfortable thing either, to go and come back that day. And in most cases, that's not going to be possible. The only one that would potentially be possible in something like that would be Nashville, but then it's going to be driving there and back. And they might not have their full broadcast and press box capabilities either. So it's all but finalized that we're not going to be on the road. We're going to call the games from the stadium. And if that's what we got to do, it's what we got to do. It's better when you can be in the building, but it's also better if, we're not putting anybody else at risk and we're not putting ourselves at risk.
Yep.
That's the number one thing.
Yes, breaking news sounder, please.
Okay, I hope you got this one right this time.
Nashville Soccer Club announced today the club has come to terms on a contract extension with U.S. men's national team international Walker Zimmerman through 2023. Nashville will be using targeted allocation money to sign Zimmerman. The agreement, which also features an extension option for the 2024 season, quoting Nashville SC's release, further solidifies the center back as a long-term piece of the club's future in Major League Soccer. Press conference today at 3 o'clock Eastern time for more.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense for them to give up as much as they did to get him and not extend him. So, yeah, I get that. I'm glad they got the deal done. He was getting some interest in Europe before the outbreak. I don't know how deep it was, but he was getting interest from clubs. Also, he's getting interest from clubs back in his Dallas days. So this is a good move for Nashville. It's a good player to build around, and I think a face of the club for a long period of time. Doesn't mean he doesn't go to Europe during that, but it means that they'll get maximum value for him because they'll be able to get a bigger transfer fee knowing he's under contract. Good fit completely. Rich Laverty talking about the Sam Mewis deal going to Manchester City from NWSL. Rich said that NWSL Europe deals are complex and many still ongoing. Write an article over at probably These Footy Times or Our Game magazine, to the outlets that Rich writes for. Going to explain why it's such a minefield, whether it's dealing with U.S. soccer or the league itself. Like, you got to remember, in these players have contracts with the U.S. Soccer Federation and with the league, and which one drives where the player plays, that's not always easy to see. So they're very complicated. It'll be interesting to see from Rich. Rich J. Laverty on Twitter, looking out for that article later on today. Because we've heard Rose Lavelle was a possibility, although we've heard that she's got an ankle issue that could scupper that deal. We'll see if others happen because, yeah, if NWSL doesn't play a remainder of the season, and that wasn't the plan initially, now it's looking like they could, in the next week, come back to training and play some games against teams nearby, but I don't know what, are they just friendlies, I guess? I don't know what that means. If you are a Sam Mewis, if you're a player who's on the fringes of the national team program, you're going to want to go play. So you're going to want to go to Europe. If it's a loan, if it's a transfer, whatever, you're going to want to go play. You're not going to want to be sitting around training and then, playing friendlies. So there could be a lot more coming. I mean, you look at so many players from the Courage, like a Lynn Williams, who's pushing her way into this conversation, a Jess McDonald, ton of different players who could be looking at these kinds of moves. So I think there will be quite a few between European clubs and NWSL and U.S. Soccer, but it's complicated.
You mentioned Messi and Barcelona Napoli. Univision says that broadcast drew 1.1 million viewers, making it the most watched Champions League round of 16 game in U.S. TV history, even without CBS reporting their number yet. Not a surprise that number was, it was a big number, but 1.1, that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Messi's going to definitely draw that kind of a number, so very big thing. All right, couple of bits of news as we wrap up. In Brazil, you had the first round of games in the Brasileiro, the nationwide league. You had some like state tournament games before, and it was kind of scattered and all over the place. That's what it was looking. The nationwide league returned, which is, you talk about Brazil's issues with coronavirus. You can compare them to the United States. Brazil had a couple games that were postponed, and one, Sao Paulo and Goiás, was postponed minutes before kickoff. Sao Paulo players had chartered a flight. They had traveled. They had stayed the night before. They were on the field ready to go, and it was postponed literally minutes before kickoff. Goiás had either 9 to 10 players, depends on the reporting, that tested positive or inconclusive. So they're dealing with those challenges. Now, I think their conversations around the virus are even worse than they are here. But keep an eye on Brazil because they're doing what MLS is intending to do. And I don't think they have the protocols in place to do this effectively. Australia, you've got 2 clubs, Central Coast Mariners and Newcastle Jets, that are up for sale. You've got people trying to get rid of those teams because they're not making any money. And they're potentially going to go out of business. The A-League is trying to figure out how to deal with this, and they're talking about something similar to what MLS did in its early days when you had owners pull out and the other owners banded together to keep it going. Now, in MLS's case, you were able to have Phil Anschutz owning like 5-6 teams. The Hunt's owning multiple teams. The Kraft's owning multiple teams. Now, you can't do that in Australia. You can't do that here now either without an exception. But the way Australia is looking at doing this is to create a trust with the league to where the other owners would put money into it. They wouldn't have say in how those clubs are run, but there would be a trust that would run those teams while you're trying to sell them. So keep an eye on that. That's 2 teams out of a fairly small league that are in big, big trouble in Australia. And it was brought up in the main room here. Victor Vucetich is reportedly, according to ESPN, 1 signing away from being the new Chivas coach. Chivas de Guadalajara let Luis Fernando Tena go over the weekend. So Tena is now on the list. Vucetich could be off the list by the time we get done with this. So we shall see. Vucetich would not have been a good fit. A name, a very experienced manager. I don't think he would have been a good fit here. So I'm not very sad about him not being on the list anymore. We'll see if Chivas gets that done. So, Adam from 816 is bringing stuff from his rumor mill. And I saw this, but I didn't see it from a credible source. And, Adam, I don't know your rumor mill yet, so I can't put you in that category. You did have issues in the NWSL tournament, and I don't know if it got to this degree that Adam has said in the room talking about U.S. Soccer calling teams during games and telling coaches to make subs. I know that minutes were managed in the tournament, and that was a huge turnoff for me. That meant the tournament didn't matter because you have the national team saying, like, that player's playing too many minutes. They can't play more than 30 in the next game. Now, Rose Lavelle had an ankle injury that we didn't know about at the time, so that makes a little more sense. But it came up a lot with Rose Lavelle and her minutes being managed in the tournament. That means the club team doesn't matter. It's not okay. That's not gonna fly. That has to stop. The U.S. women's national team, the U.S. soccer program in that way has a lot of power. That doesn't help, though. The teams have to be able to manage it. You have to give those teams the ability to manage their players properly. Now, they need to manage their players properly, don't get me wrong, but they have to have that ability to do it. I don't like that situation. That was a very big negative for me in this tournament with U.S. Soccer's management of minutes for national team players. So that's got to stop in general, but they do have these players under contract, so that makes it even more complicated. They've got to clarify and better that relationship, period. Yes, Christopher Abel, the Chivas coach who was let go, Luis Fernando Tena, I mean, he's on the list. He's on my list because he's out of work. I don't think he'd be a top candidate, but could he be a candidate? Absolutely. Man, everybody's throwing all kinds of breaking news in here as I'm trying to sign off. Ricky Ricardo, not breaking news. I'm not hitting the sounder, John. Settle down.
I was going to say, how many coaches are on your list, by the way?
Like
I know you have
59 or something. I don't know. There's a bunch. I'm not getting into it till we start to hear more about interviews happening. Ricky Ricardo said, and I've seen this report as well, that Toronto's U.S. base will be Red Bull Arena.
Yeah.
Wondering what Montreal will be because they have not been very clear. It looks like Vancouver's could be Portland. That's being reported. So keep an eye on those. You've got Champions League qualifying matches being moved. Yeah, no sounder required. Thank you, Colonel. You've got all kinds of stuff. We're going to go before more stuff happens. How about that?
Yeah.
I'd like to eat lunch. So
yeah, I would too.
We will be back at 7 o'clock with Soccer Over There. Probably sends Nick a leafy. He's got things going on. He can't always be here with us. So we'll be yelling about Soccer Over There, and maybe we'll be yelling in Nick's honor or some reason.
There you go. Ranting in Italian?
No, I can't rant in Italian, but we'll play the GIF so everybody can at least see what it would look like. But we'll talk all the Soccer Over There. We'll talk Europa League. We'll talk Champions League. We'll talk about all the transfers. I'm sure there will be some MLS talk that will factor in. There'll be some South American talk as well. That's what happens. Thanks for hanging out. We might talk Australia, too. It could happen. Maybe we'll have owners in Australia by then. I watched the last 5 minutes of the Sydney FC match this morning, so I got my A-League fix in.
Oh, wow.
All right, 7 o'clock. We'll be back. Until then, mucho platio.
Mucho platio.